My name is Anne Chen, I'm 34 years old, and I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who'd end up telling a story like this. You know, if you've ever trusted someone with your whole heart only to watch them destroy everything you built together while you were fighting for your life, hit that like button and subscribe, because what I'm about to share might make you feel a little less alone in this messy, unpredictable world we live in. It started on a Tuesday morning in late October, when the Seattle rain was coming down in sheets against our bedroom window, that gray, persistent drizzle that makes the whole city feel like it's wrapped in wet concrete. I was sitting on the edge of our bed, the one Marcus and I had picked out together at that overpriced furniture store in Bellevue 5 years ago, back when we were still talking about having kids and growing old together. My hands were shaking as I stared at my phone, at the notification from our bank that made absolutely no sense. A withdrawal of $47,000 from the GoFundMe account my sister had set up for my cancer treatment. $47,000 just gone. The room felt like it was tilting, like the floor had turned to water beneath my feet. I could hear Marcus downstairs in the kitchen, the coffee maker gurgling, the sound of him humming something under his breath, probably scrolling through his phone like it was just another ordinary morning. Outside, a bus hissed to a stop on the street below our Capitol Hill apartment, and somewhere a car alarm was going off, that piercing sound that nobody ever pays attention to in this city. My fingers felt numb as I opened the banking app, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. The transfer had happened at 2:30 in the morning. While I was sleeping. While the chemo drugs were still working their way through my system, making my dreams feel like I was swimming through thick honey. I want you to understand something about where I was in my life at that moment. 3 months earlier, I'd been sitting in Dr. Harrison's office at Swedish Medical Center, the one with the fake plants that were trying too hard to make the space feel less clinical, less like a place where people received the worst news of their lives. She told me I had stage 3 breast cancer, and I remember thinking how strange it was that the sun was shining so brightly through her window, how the Space Needle looked so postcard perfect in the distance, like the world should have known to be gray and miserable for this conversation. I was 34 years old. I did yoga 4 times a week. I ate organic. I'd just gotten a promotion at the marketing firm where I worked. Cancer wasn't supposed to be part of my story. But it was. And the treatment was brutal. Not the kind of brutal they show you in movies, where people look pale but still basically put together. Real brutal. The kind where you're throwing up at 3 in the morning and your hair comes out in clumps in the shower and you have to sit down after walking from the bedroom to the bathroom because your body feels like it weighs 1,000 pounds. Marcus had been there through all of it, or so I thought. He'd held my hand during the first chemo session. He'd helped me shave my head when the hair loss got too patchy to ignore. He told me I was beautiful even when I looked like a ghost of myself in the mirror. My sister Jennifer had set up the GoFundMe because our insurance was garbage. You know how it is in America, you can have a decent job and still be one medical emergency away from bankruptcy. The treatments, the medications, the appointments, they were adding up faster than we could handle. Jennifer, bless her heart, she's always been the organized one, the one who takes charge when things fall apart. She'd written this beautiful description of my situation, posted photos of me from before I got sick, when I still had my long black hair and didn't look like I'd been hollowed out from the inside. She'd shared it everywhere, on Facebook, on Instagram, sent it to everyone we knew from college, from our old neighborhood in California, from Marcus's work. And people had been so generous. So incredibly generous. Friends I hadn't talked to in years had donated $50, $100. Marcus's aunt in Portland had sent $500. My old boss had contributed $1,000. Strangers, complete strangers who'd seen the post shared by friends of friends, had given what they could. Every notification had felt like a little miracle, like proof that there was still goodness in the world, that people cared about other people even when they didn't have to. We'd raised almost $80,000. Enough to cover the treatments my insurance wouldn't touch, enough to keep us from losing our apartment, enough to let me focus on getting better instead of drowning in medical debt. 47,000 of those dollars had just vanished into thin air. I sat there on that bed, my bald head cold even though the heating was on, my stomach churning with something that felt worse than the nausea from the chemo. The rain kept falling outside, that endless Seattle rain that Marcus used to joke was the city's way of crying for everyone who was too tough to cry for themselves. I could smell the coffee brewing downstairs, that dark roast he liked from the place on Pike Street, and suddenly that smell made me want to be sick. I knew. God, I knew before I even went downstairs. There was this terrible clarity settling over me, the kind you get when all the little weird things you've been ignoring suddenly line up into a picture you don't want to see. The late nights Marcus had been spending at work. The way he'd become protective of his phone, angling the screen away from me when notifications came in. The new cologne he'd started wearing, something expensive that definitely wasn't the Old Spice he'd been using since we met. The way he'd been showering as soon as he got home before he even said hello to me. I'd chalked it all up to stress, to him dealing with my illness in his own way, to the pressure of being a caregiver when you're only 36 years old and this wasn't what you signed up for when you said I do. I went downstairs. Each step felt like I was walking toward the edge of something, like my life was about to split into before and after. Our apartment was small, one of those converted historic buildings where the floors creak no matter how carefully you walk and the radiators clank and hiss like they're having conversations with each other. We'd moved in right after we got married, charmed by the crown molding and the view of the city from our bedroom window, willing to overlook the fact that the kitchen was barely big enough for one person and the bathroom had those old pink tiles that were probably original from the 1940s. Marcus was standing at the counter, scrolling through his phone with one hand and holding his coffee mug with the other. He was wearing his work clothes, those khaki pants and button-down shirt he wore to his job at the engineering firm in South Lake Union. He looked normal. Completely, perfectly normal. His brown hair was still damp from his shower, and he'd nicked himself shaving, a tiny spot of tissue stuck to his jaw. When he saw me, he smiled, that same smile that had made me fall in love with him 7 years ago at a friend's 4th of July barbecue in Fremont. I held up my phone. My hand was steadier than I expected. $47,000, I said. My voice didn't sound like my voice. It sounded flat, dead. From the GoFundMe. It was transferred out at 2:30 this morning. The way his face changed, I'll never forget it. It was like watching a mask slip. For just a second, maybe less, I saw panic in his eyes, real raw panic. Then he rearranged his features into confusion. What? That's impossible. There must be some kind of mistake. There's no mistake, I said. I could feel this strange calm settling over me, the kind of calm that comes when the worst thing has already happened and you're just watching it unfold. The money's gone. Transferred to an account I don't recognize. You're the only other person with access to that account. He set his coffee down too hard and it sloshed over the rim onto the counter. He didn't seem to notice. And I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe it was fraud, maybe someone hacked the account. We should call the bank right away. I could have let him keep lying. Part of me wanted to, because once you acknowledge the truth you can't unknow it, you can't go back to the before. I was so tired. Tired from the chemo, tired from the fear, tired from fighting a battle inside my own body, and I didn't have the energy to fight whatever this was too. Where did the money go, Marcus? He started toward me, reaching out like he was going to comfort me, and I stepped back. I actually stepped back from my own husband in our own kitchen, and the look on his face when I did that, I think that's when he knew it was over. I can explain, he said, and those are the 3 worst words you can ever hear from someone you love, because nothing that comes after those words is ever something you want to hear. Then explain. The radiator in the corner was hissing and clanking, and somewhere upstairs our neighbor was walking around, her footsteps heavy on the old wooden floors. Marcus ran his hand through his hair, a gesture he always made when he was stressed, and I realized I was cataloging all these little details, storing them away like evidence of the moment my marriage died. I made an investment, he said finally. A business opportunity. It was supposed to be quick, in and out, double the money in a month. I was going to put it all back plus more before you even noticed it was gone. Of all the things I'd been preparing myself to hear, that wasn't it. Not infidelity, not gambling, but an investment. He'd stolen money from my cancer fund to make an investment. You took money that people donated to save my life and invested it? It wasn't like that, he said quickly. And you have to understand, we were drowning. Even with the GoFundMe, we were barely keeping our heads above water. The bills kept coming, the insurance company kept denying claims, we were going to lose everything. This guy I know from work, he told me about this opportunity, cryptocurrency thing, it was a sure thing. Actually laughed. I stood there in my old sweatpants and the hat I wore to hide my bald head, and I laughed. Because of course it was cryptocurrency. Of course my husband had turned into one of those guys who thought they could get rich quick with digital money they didn't understand. A sure thing, I repeated. Marcus, there's no such thing as a sure thing. His jaw tightened. I was trying to help. I was trying to save us. You don't know what it's been like watching you go through this, feeling helpless, and the money just kept disappearing into medical bills and medications, and I thought if I could just make one good move, one smart investment, we could get ahead of it instead of always playing catch up. That money wasn't yours to invest, I said, and my voice was shaking now. That calm was cracking. People gave that money to me. To help me live. My cousin donated money she probably needed for her own bills. Your mom took money out of her retirement. Strangers who will never meet me gave what they could because they believed it was going to help save someone's life, and you took it to gamble on cryptocurrency. It wasn't gambling, he snapped, and there was anger in his voice now, defensive anger. I did research. I talked to people who knew what they were doing. It was calculated risk. Where's the money now? He looked away. Out the window where the rain was still coming down, where people were walking past on the sidewalk below with their umbrellas and their coffee cups and their normal lives that didn't include stolen cancer funds. The investment didn't work out. How much is left? Anne. How much, Marcus? Nothing, he said quietly. It's all gone. The platform collapsed. The guy who recommended it, turns out he was part of some kind of scam. I've been trying to figure out how to fix it, I swear. I've been working overtime. I was going to take out a loan. I was going to make it right. The apartment felt like it was closing in on me. I could hear my own breathing, too fast, too shallow. $47,000 gone. Money that people had given in good faith, given to help me survive, evaporated into the digital ether because my husband thought he was smarter than everyone else. I want you out, I said. What? Out. Of this apartment. Today. Right now. And please, we can work through this. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but I was trying to help. You have to believe me. I looked at him, really looked at him, this man I'd married, this man I'd built a life with, this man who'd promised to love me in sickness and in health. Do you have any idea what you've done? Those people trusted us. My sister put her reputation on the line vouching for us. And you stole from them. From me. While I was fighting cancer. I didn't steal, I borrowed, he said, and he actually sounded indignant, like there was a meaningful difference. I was going to pay it back. With what magical money, Marcus? You lost it all. It's gone. And now what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to pay for my treatment? How am I supposed to look Jennifer in the eye? How am I supposed to tell all those people who donated that their money is gone because my husband is an idiot? That last word hung in the air between us, sharp and mean, and I didn't take it back because I meant it. He was an idiot. An arrogant, selfish idiot who thought he could fix everything with some get-rich-quick scheme and instead destroyed what was left of my trust, my security, my hope. He grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair. Fine. I'll go. But you're going to realize you need me. You can't do this alone, Anne. You're sick. You need help. I needed a partner, I said. I needed someone I could trust. What I got was a thief. He left. Just walked out of the apartment into the October rain. And I stood there in the kitchen listening to his footsteps fade away down the stairs, listening to the building settle around me, listening to my own heartbeat in my ears. I felt numb, hollowed out, like the cancer had finally won, not by killing my body but by taking everything else. I called Jennifer. She answered on the second ring, cheerful, probably thinking I was calling with good news about my latest scan. Hey Anne, what's up? The GoFundMe money, I said. It's gone. Marcus took it. He invested it in some cryptocurrency scam and lost it all. The silence on the other end was so complete I thought the call had dropped. Then, he what? I told her everything. Every awful detail. I could hear her breathing getting faster, could practically feel her rage building through the phone. Jennifer had never been Marcus's biggest fan. She'd always thought he was too passive, too willing to let life happen to him instead of taking control. But she'd supported our marriage because I loved him and he seemed to make me happy. Now I could hear her opinion of him crystallizing into something permanent and unforgiving. I'm going to kill him, she said when I finished. I'm literally going to drive down there from Vancouver and kill him with my bare hands. Get in line, I said, and I surprised myself by almost laughing. What are you going to do? I don't know. I have to tell people. Everyone who donated, they deserve to know their money didn't go where they thought it was going. God, Jennifer, how do I even begin to explain this? You don't have to do this right now, she said. Give yourself a day to process. Let me handle the GoFundMe page. I'll figure out how to word it, how to explain without throwing you under the bus. It's not my fault, I said, and I realized I needed to hear myself say it out loud. I didn't do this. He did this. Damn right it's not your fault. None of this is your fault. Not the cancer, not Marcus being a complete waste of oxygen, none of it. We talked for another 20 minutes, Jennifer getting progressively angrier, me feeling progressively more numb. When we hung up, I sat down on the couch and just stared at the wall. The apartment felt different without Marcus in it, emptier but also somehow cleaner, like something toxic had been removed. I thought about everything I'd been through in the last few months. The diagnosis, the chemo, losing my hair, the nausea, the exhaustion, the fear that lived in my chest every single day like a second heartbeat. And through all of it, I'd thought at least I had Marcus. At least I wasn't alone. But I had been alone. I'd been alone with someone who was stealing from me while I slept. The next few days were a blur. Jennifer posted an update on the GoFundMe page, carefully worded, explaining that there had been a misappropriation of funds and we were working to resolve the situation. The response was immediate and split right down the middle. Half the people were supportive, sending messages of encouragement, telling me they still believed in me and not to give up. The other half were furious, demanding refunds, accusing me of being part of a scam. Someone called me a fraud. Someone else said I deserved to be sick if this was how I was going to treat people's generosity. I read every comment, every message, letting them cut into me because in some twisted way it felt like what I deserved for not seeing who Marcus really was, for not protecting everyone's donations better. Marcus sent texts. Long, rambling texts about how sorry he was, how he'd made a terrible mistake, how he wanted to make things right. I blocked his number after the fifth one. I didn't have the energy to engage with his guilt. I was too busy trying to figure out how I was going to pay for my next round of chemo. My oncologist's office called. The financial department, very polite, very professional, letting me know that I had an outstanding balance and they needed to work out a payment plan before my next appointment. I wanted to tell them that my husband had stolen the money that was supposed to pay that balance. I wanted to scream that I was doing everything right, that I was fighting as hard as I could, and the universe kept finding new ways to knock me down. Instead I said I'd call them back and hung up before they could hear me crying. It was about a week after Marcus left when something strange started happening. The GoFundMe, which had been steadily draining from refund requests, suddenly started growing again. Small donations at first, $20 here, $50 there, people who'd heard about what happened and wanted to help. Then bigger ones. 100. 200. 500. I watched the total climb back up, not as high as it had been, but enough that I could breathe a little easier, enough that I could see a path forward. And then, on a gray November morning when the rain had finally stopped and weak sunlight was trying to break through the clouds, I got a notification that made me think my phone had glitched. A donation to the GoFundMe. $500,000. $500,000. From an account I didn't recognize with a name I'd never heard before. Vanessa Morrison. I stared at it for so long that my phone screen went dark and I had to tap it to bring it back up. $500,000. That wasn't a donation, that was a life-changing amount of money. That was enough to cover every medical expense I could possibly have, enough to live on while I recovered, enough to rebuild everything Marcus had destroyed and more. It didn't make sense. Nobody donated that kind of money to a stranger's GoFundMe. Nobody. There was a message attached to the donation. I'm so sorry for what you've been through. You deserve so much better than this. Please use this to get well and build a new life. You owe me nothing. I read it 5 times. 10 times. Trying to find meaning in it, trying to figure out who this Vanessa Morrison was and why she'd just given me $500,000. I googled the name but nothing came up that seemed relevant, just a bunch of random social media profiles that couldn't possibly be the right person. I checked the GoFundMe page to see if she'd left any other information, but there was nothing. Just that message and that impossible amount of money. Jennifer called me before I could call her. Did you see it? The donation? And what the hell is happening? I have no idea, I said. I was sitting on my couch in my pajamas, even though it was 2 in the afternoon, because time had become meaningless since Marcus left and the concept of getting dressed felt like a monumental task. I don't know anyone named Vanessa Morrison. I've never heard that name in my life. $500,000. Jennifer said, and I could hear the awe and confusion in her voice. That's not normal. People don't just donate that kind of money to strangers. Do you think it's a mistake? Like maybe she meant to type 50,000 and added an extra 0. The message doesn't sound like a mistake, I said. It sounds deliberate. Like she knows me. Or knows what happened. This is so weird, Jennifer said. Good weird, obviously life-changing weird, but still weird. Are you going to try to contact her? I don't know how. There's no contact information, just the donation and the message. We were still talking, still trying to make sense of it, when my phone buzzed with an incoming call from a number I didn't recognize. Seattle area code. For a second I thought it might be the hospital or the insurance company or some other reminder of how complicated my life had become. I almost didn't answer. But something made me. Hello. Anne. The voice on the other end was female, professional, with just a hint of nervousness underneath. Yes. My name is Vanessa Morrison. I think we need to talk. The world tilted again, that same feeling I'd had when I saw the money missing from the GoFundMe, that sense of reality shifting beneath my feet. Jennifer was saying something in my ear, asking who was calling, but I couldn't make my mouth work to answer her. You donated the money, I finally managed to say. I did, Vanessa Morrison said. And I think I owe you an explanation. Can we meet? There's a coffee shop in Capitol Hill, Victrola on 15th. Do you know it? I know it, I said. It was 3 blocks from my apartment, a place I used to go all the time before I got sick, before leaving the house became an exhausting ordeal. Can you meet me there in an hour? I'll be at the back table. I have red hair. I'll be wearing a gray coat. I know this is strange. I know you have no reason to trust me, but please. I need to tell you something. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there holding my phone, Jennifer's voice still coming through, demanding to know what was happening. Someone wants to meet me, I said. The woman who donated the money. She wants to meet me at Victrola. Do not go alone, Jennifer said immediately. I don't care if she just gave you $500,000, this could be some kind of scam or worse. I'm 2 hours away, but I can leave right now. I'll be fine, I said, even though I had no idea if that was true. It's a public place. And honestly, Jennifer, what else do I have to lose at this point? I got dressed. Actually dressed in real clothes, jeans and a sweater and the wig I'd bought but barely wore because it never felt quite right, always a little too synthetic, a reminder of what I'd lost. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. I'd lost so much weight that my clothes hung off me. My skin had that grayish tone that came from months of chemicals coursing through my veins. But my eyes looked more alive than they had in weeks, fueled by curiosity and confusion and this strange desperate hope that maybe, somehow, this Vanessa Morrison person could explain something that would make everything else make sense. The walk to Victrola took me twice as long as it should have. My stamina was shot and I had to stop twice to catch my breath, leaning against buildings and pretending to look at my phone so people wouldn't stare. The November air was cold and damp, that particular Seattle cold that seeps into your bones and makes you wonder why anyone chooses to live in a place where the sun disappears for months at a time. But there were also things I'd forgotten I loved about this city. The smell of coffee and rain-soaked concrete. The murals painted on the sides of buildings. The way everyone walked with their heads down and their hands jammed in their pockets, united in their quiet misery about the weather. Victrola was warm and crowded, full of people on laptops and people having quiet conversations and the hiss of the espresso machine. I scanned the room and spotted her immediately at the back table. Red hair, just like she'd said, falling in waves past her shoulders. Gray coat. She was beautiful in that effortless way some women are, with high cheekbones and clear skin and a nervous energy that radiated off her even from across the room. She was staring at her phone, her leg bouncing under the table, and when she looked up and saw me, recognition flashed across her face. I made my way to her table, navigating around chairs and backpacks and all the obstacles of normal life that felt foreign to me now. She stood up as I approached, and I realized she was taller than me, maybe 5'9", slender and put together in a way that made me even more aware of how I looked, how sick I looked. Anne, she said, and it wasn't a question. Thank you for coming. Can I get you something? Tea. Just water, I said, sitting down before my legs could give out. I can't really handle coffee anymore. She flagged down a barista, ordered my water and an herbal tea for herself. And then we sat there in this awkward silence while we waited for the drinks to arrive. She kept opening her mouth like she was going to say something and then closing it again. Her hands were clasped on the table in front of her, and I noticed she was wearing a wedding ring, a simple gold band. The drinks came. I took a sip of water, letting the cold liquid settle my nerves. So, I said, "You're Vanessa Morrison. You just gave me $500,000. And you want to explain why?" She took a breath, looked me straight in the eye and said, "I've been having an affair with your husband for 8 months." The coffee shop noise faded into white static. I heard her words, understood them individually, but couldn't quite make them connect into a coherent thought. For 8 months. Marcus. What? I've been sleeping with Marcus, she said, and her voice was steady but her eyes were filling with tears. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. We worked together at the engineering firm. It started last March and I didn't know he was married at first. He didn't wear a ring, he never mentioned you, and by the time I found out it was already too late. I was already in too deep. March. 8 months ago. 2 months before my diagnosis. He'd been cheating on me before I even got sick. All those times I'd thought he was working late, all those showers as soon as he got home, that new cologne, it had all been because of her. Because of Vanessa Morrison sitting across from me with her red hair and her guilty eyes and her $500,000 donation. I didn't know about your cancer until a month ago, she continued, words spilling out of her now like she'd been holding them in for too long. He told me he was separated, that you two were living separate lives, practically divorced already. Then one night I was at his hotel room, we'd been meeting at hotels, and I saw his laptop open to the GoFundMe page. Your GoFundMe page. And I realized he'd been lying about everything. You weren't separated. You were home going through chemo, fighting for your life, and he was with me. A hotel room. He'd been using our money we needed for my treatment, to pay for hotel rooms to sleep with his coworker. I thought I'd reached the bottom of how low Marcus could go, but apparently there were depths I hadn't even imagined. I confronted him, Vanessa said. I told him I was done, that what we were doing was disgusting, that he needed to go home to his wife. He begged me to stay. Said he loved me, that you two were basically over anyway because of your illness, that he was going to leave you as soon as you got better because he couldn't do it while you were sick. How noble of him, I heard myself say. My voice sounded strange, detached. I broke it off. I told him I never wanted to see him again. But then a week ago he came to my apartment. He was desperate. He told me about the investment, about losing the GoFundMe money, about how you'd kicked him out and he didn't know what to do. He wanted me to lend him money. To help him fix what he'd done. Did you? No. I told him to go to hell. But after he left, I couldn't stop thinking about you. About what you must be going through, dealing with cancer and betrayal and financial ruin all at the same time. So I looked at the GoFundMe page again. I read your sister's update about the missing money. I read all the comments from people who donated, and I just felt so responsible somehow, even though I didn't take the money. But I benefited from his lies. I was part of the reason your marriage fell apart. So I wanted to do something. $500,000 is not just something, I said. Where did you even get that kind of money? He smiled, sad and small. My grandmother died last year and left me her estate. It was supposed to be my future, my security, my someday house and kids and retirement. But what good is financial security if you can't live with yourself? I've been walking around for the past month feeling like the worst person alive. This doesn't fix what I did. Nothing can fix that. But maybe it can help you heal, both physically and from what Marcus and I did to you. I should have been angry at her. She'd slept with my husband. She'd been part of the web of lies that had destroyed my life. But sitting there looking at her, seeing the genuine anguish on her face, I found I couldn't summon rage. She'd been lied to too. Marcus had made her into something she didn't want to be, same as he'd done to me. I don't know what to say, I admitted. Thank you seems absurdly inadequate for $500,000, but also you slept with my husband, so thank you also seems wrong. You don't have to say anything, Vanessa said. I don't deserve your forgiveness and I'm not asking for it. I just needed you to know the truth. All of it. Marcus is a liar and a user, and you deserve so much better. And you deserve to beat this cancer and have a beautiful life on the other side of it. And if my grandmother's money can help make that happen, then at least some good came from this mess. We sat there for a while longer, two women whose lives had been blown apart by the same man, drinking our water and tea and trying to figure out how to move forward. She told me more about the affair, details I didn't really want to hear but felt I needed to know. The first time they slept together at a conference in Portland. The way he'd pursued her made her feel special, told her she was everything his wife wasn't. The lies he'd told about me, painting me as cold and distant, a marriage already dead in all but name. He made me believe I was saving him from a loveless situation, Vanessa said. He was so convincing. And I wanted to believe him because believing him meant I wasn't a homewrecker. I wasn't destroying a marriage. I was just helping someone find happiness they deserved. But it was all bullshit. Every word of it. He's good at that, I said. Making people believe what he needs them to believe. When I finally left Victrola, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that seemed too beautiful for how I felt inside. Vanessa had given me her number, told me to call if I ever needed anything, if I ever wanted to talk. I didn't know if I would. Being around her felt like being around a mirror showing me the worst version of my life, the path I'd been on without knowing it. But I had $500,000 in my GoFundMe account. I had a way forward. I had a chance to not just survive but actually recover, to pay off every medical bill, to maybe even take some time off work to focus on getting better without the constant stress of money hanging over me. Vanessa Morrison had given me that. My husband's mistress had given me a future when my husband had tried to take it away. The next few weeks were strange and surreal. Jennifer came down from Vancouver and stayed with me for a week, helping me set up meetings with financial advisors and lawyers. We put the money into a trust account, protected it, made sure it could only be used for medical expenses and living costs. I didn't want to touch it for anything frivolous, didn't want to waste what Vanessa had given me out of her guilt and my pain. I filed for divorce. Marcus tried to fight it, sent more texts, showed up at the apartment once before I threatened to call the police. He wanted to explain, wanted another chance, said he'd changed. But I'd learned my lesson about believing Marcus's words over his actions. His actions had shown me exactly who he was. My treatment continued. The chemo was still brutal, still made me sick and exhausted, but knowing I could afford it made it easier somehow. I didn't have to choose between buying groceries and filling prescriptions. I didn't have to lie awake at night calculating how many more months I could keep the apartment. The financial stress that had been crushing me alongside the physical stress of cancer was gone, and I could focus all my energy on getting better. Dr. Harrison was pleased with my progress. The tumor was shrinking. The cancer cells were responding to treatment. I was one of the lucky ones, she said, catching it early enough that we had good odds of beating it completely. I wanted to tell her that luck had nothing to do with it. Luck didn't steal $47,000. Luck didn't give me $500,000 more. People did those things, in all their messy, complicated, terrible and wonderful humanity. Christmas came. I spent it with Jennifer. Her family was in Vancouver, sitting around their tree in their warm house that smelled like pine and cinnamon, watching her kids open presents with that pure joy only children can have. Jennifer's husband Tom grilled me gently about how I was doing, and I appreciated that he cared enough to ask but knew better than to push. Their kids, my niece Emma who was 7 and my nephew Jack who was 5, treated me like I was just Aunt and not Cancer Aunt, and there was something healing in the way Emma insisted I help her build her new Lego set, and Jack wanted me to read him the same book about dinosaurs 3 times in a row. Marcus sent me a text on Christmas Eve. Just 2 words, Merry Christmas. I deleted it without responding. He was already becoming a ghost in my life, someone who'd existed in my past but had no place in my future. The divorce was moving forward and my lawyer said it would be final by spring. We were dividing assets, though there wasn't much to divide. The apartment was a rental. Our savings account had been depleted by medical bills. He could keep the furniture for all I cared. I was building something new, something that didn't have his fingerprints all over it. In January I had surgery to remove what was left of the tumor. The operation was successful, Dr. Harrison said, her face bright with the kind of optimism that felt earned rather than forced. Clean margins. No sign of spread. I'd still need radiation as a precaution, but the worst was behind me. I woke up from anesthesia in a hospital room with winter light streaming through the windows, feeling like I'd been hollowed out and filled back up with something lighter, something that might actually be hope. Jennifer was there when I woke up, of course, sitting in the chair by my bed scrolling through her phone. When she saw my eyes open, she smiled so big I thought her face might crack. "Hey warrior. How you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck," I said, my voice scratchy from the breathing tube. "But a truck that was trying to help?" "That's the spirit," she laughed. "Vanessa sent flowers. They're at the nurse's station. Apparently she's been calling every few hours to check on you." Vanessa and I had developed something I couldn't quite call a friendship, but wasn't exactly not a friendship either. We texted occasionally, brief exchanges about how treatment was going, about the weather, about nothing important. She'd sent me articles about cancer recovery and recipes that were supposed to be easy on post-chemo stomachs. It was weird and complicated and not something I could explain to anyone who hadn't lived through what we'd lived through, but it worked somehow. We were 2 women who'd been caught in the blast radius of the same bomb, and there was solidarity in that even if there wasn't forgiveness. That's nice of her, I said, and I meant it. The radiation treatments started in February, easier than chemo but with their own unique exhaustion. I'd go to the hospital 5 days a week, lie on a table while machines hummed around me, and then go home and sleep for 3 hours. The Seattle winter pressed in, gray and wet and cold, but I found I didn't mind it as much as I used to. The rain felt cleansing somehow, like the city was washing itself clean, preparing for spring. My hair started growing back, soft and fuzzy like a baby's, darker than it had been before. I'd look in the mirror and see this stranger with short dark hair and too thin face and eyes that had seen too much, and slowly, gradually, I started recognizing her as me. Not the old me, not the me from before cancer and betrayal and everything that came after, but a new me. A me who'd survived things I never thought I'd have to survive. In March, almost a year after Marcus had started his affair with Vanessa, I got a job offer. My old marketing firm had heard I was getting better and wanted me back, but in a new role with less stress and more flexibility. I could work from home 3 days a week. The pay was good. The benefits were better. I said yes before they could change their minds, feeling like maybe I was rejoining the land of the living, the land of people who had futures and plans and possibilities. The divorce was finalized on a Thursday in April. I didn't go to the courthouse. My lawyer handled everything and then she called to tell me it was done. I was officially Anne Chen again, not Anne Chen Davis, and the relief I felt was so profound it almost knocked me over. I celebrated by taking myself to dinner at a nice restaurant in Belltown, sitting at the bar with a glass of wine I probably shouldn't have had but did anyway, watching the sun set over Elliott Bay and feeling like I'd earned this moment of peace. Marcus tried to reach out a few times after the divorce. Emails now since I'd blocked his number. They started apologetic and got progressively more bitter. I was making a mistake, he said. I was throwing away 7 years of marriage over one bad decision. He'd been under so much stress I didn't understand what it was like to be a caregiver. The mental gymnastics he was doing to make himself the victim would have been impressive if they weren't so pathetic. I didn't respond to any of them. There was nothing left to say to him. He'd shown me exactly who he was, and I'd finally had the clarity to believe him. By May I was done with radiation. Dr. Harrison declared me in remission, a word that felt like sunshine breaking through clouds. Remission. Not cured, not yet, but in remission. No evidence of disease. Clear scans. A future that extended beyond the next treatment, the next appointment, the next scan. I cried in her office, big ugly sobs that came from somewhere deep and primal, all the fear and pain and uncertainty I'd been holding in for over a year finally releasing. She hugged me, this professional woman in her white coat, and told me she was proud of me, and I believed her. I started thinking about what I wanted my life to look like now that I had one again. The apartment in Capitol Hill was too full of ghosts, too full of memories of Marcus and who I'd been when I lived there with him. I could afford something better now, something that was just mine. I started looking at places, nothing fancy but bright and clean with good light and space for me to breathe. I found a 1-bedroom in Fremont, on the 2nd floor of a house that had been converted into apartments. It had hardwood floors and big windows and a little balcony where I could put plants. The landlord was an older woman named Margaret who reminded me of my grandmother, tough and kind in equal measure. She didn't ask about why I was moving or notice my short hair or treat me like I was fragile. She just wanted first and last month's rent and a promise that I'd take care of the place. I signed the lease sitting at her kitchen table, drinking tea she insisted I have, feeling like I was signing myself into a new chapter. Moving day was a Saturday in June, one of those perfect Seattle days where the sky is impossibly blue and everyone in the city remembers why they put up with 9 months of rain. Jennifer came down with Tom and the kids to help me move. We didn't have much to move, just my personal stuff, some furniture I'd bought new because I didn't want anything from the old apartment. Emma and Jack thought it was a grand adventure, running up and down the stairs, exploring the new place, claiming the balcony as their special spot for when they visited. Vanessa showed up, unexpected, carrying a housewarming gift wrapped in silver paper. Jennifer's face went tight when she saw her, that protective sister instinct kicking in, but I introduced them and watched them size each other up like 2 cats meeting for the first time. Vanessa handed me the gift, a beautiful set of kitchen knives with a note that said, "For cutting ties with the past." I laughed, actually laughed, and Jennifer's expression softened slightly. We all ended up having pizza on my empty living room floor, sitting in a circle like kids at a sleepover, and it was strange and wonderful and not at all what I would have pictured a year ago. My sister who'd saved me by setting up the GoFundMe. My brother-in-law who'd driven down to help me move. My niece and nephew who made everything feel lighter. And Vanessa, the woman who'd slept with my husband and then given me $500,000, sitting cross-legged in jeans and a t-shirt, making Emma laugh with stories about her cat. After everyone left, I stood on my balcony as the sun went down, watching the neighborhood settle into evening. Families were having dinner. Someone was playing music. A couple walked past holding hands, and I didn't feel that knife twist of jealousy and loneliness that I'd felt for months. I just felt quiet. Haunted. Like maybe I was exactly where I needed to be. Summer in Seattle is a gift. Those 2 months where the city transforms into the most beautiful place on earth and everyone forgets about the rain and the gray and falls in love with where they live all over again. I started running again slowly at first just around Green Lake, building my strength back. My body felt different now, changed by everything it had been through but also stronger somehow. I'd pushed it to the absolute limit and it had survived. I was learning to trust it again. I went on a date in July. A guy named David I'd met through a friend from work. A software engineer who was funny and kind and had a dog named Potato. We got coffee, then dinner, then went for a walk along the waterfront. He knew about my cancer, my divorce, the broad strokes of what I'd been through, and he didn't treat me like I was broken or damaged. He just treated me like a person he wanted to get to know. It didn't turn into anything serious, but it was nice, proof that I could still do normal things, that there was life after everything that had happened. Vanessa and I met for lunch once a month. We'd chosen a random Vietnamese restaurant in the International District as our spot, neutral territory where neither of us had history. We'd eat pho and talk about work, about books we were reading, about her ongoing therapy to work through her guilt and my ongoing therapy to work through my trauma. We never talked about Marcus. He was the thing that connected us, but we'd both decided he didn't deserve our energy anymore. In one of these lunches in August, Vanessa told me she was moving. Taking a job in San Francisco, leaving Seattle and all its complicated memories behind. I need a fresh start, she said, playing with her napkin. Everywhere I go in this city I see places Marcus and I went, places I lied to myself about what we were doing. I need to be somewhere that's just mine. I understood that completely. San Francisco's great, I said. Expensive but great. Will you visit? She asked, and there was something vulnerable in her voice, like she actually cared about my answer. Maybe, I said honestly. This thing between us, it's weird, Vanessa. I don't know what to call it. You're not my friend, but you're not my friend. You're just this person who's inextricably linked to the worst and best parts of the last year of my life. The best parts, she asked. You gave me my life back, I said simply. When I had nothing, when I was drowning, you threw me a life raft even though you didn't have to. Even though it cost you everything your grandmother left you. That's not nothing. She had tears in her eyes. I wish I'd never met Marcus. I wish I'd never been part of hurting you. Me too, I said. But wishing doesn't change anything. What happened happened. All we can do is move forward. She left for San Francisco in September. We hugged goodbye on the sidewalk outside the restaurant. An awkward, uncertain hug between two people who'd been through something together but didn't quite know what that something meant. She promised to text when she got settled. I promised to actually respond. And then she was gone, another person cycling out of my life, making room for whatever came next. Fall arrived, and with it came my 1-year cancerversary, as Jennifer insisted on calling it. 1 year since diagnosis. 1 year of hell and survival and transformation. I was still cancer-free. Still in remission. Dr. Harrison said my scans looked perfect. I'd beaten the odds, she said, though we both knew that cancer was a tricky bastard and remission didn't mean cured. It just meant winning for now, and I'd take that victory. Jennifer threw me a party, a small gathering at her place in Vancouver with close friends and family. Everyone made speeches about how strong I was, how inspiring, how brave. I smiled and thanked them, but inside I was thinking about how I hadn't felt strong or brave. I just felt desperate and terrified and like I was doing whatever I had to do to survive one more day. But if they needed me to be their inspiration, their proof that bad things could be survived, I could be that for them. My cousin Sarah pulled me aside during the party, the one who donated money she couldn't really afford to the GoFundMe. I'm glad you're okay, she said. When Jennifer told us about what Marcus did about the money, I was so angry. I almost didn't believe people could be that selfish. Neither did I admitted. But then this stranger gave me $500,000 because she felt guilty about sleeping with him, so I guess people can be incredibly selfless too. We're all just complicated. Is that the moral of your story? Sarah asked, smiling. People are complicated? I think the moral is that you can survive things you think will destroy you, I said. And that sometimes the worst things lead to the best things, in ways you never could have predicted. If Marcus hadn't stolen that money, if Vanessa hadn't found out about me, she never would have donated what she did. I'd probably still be drowning in medical debt, still be married to a man who was cheating on me, still be living a half-life built on lies. So in a weird, twisted way, him being a terrible person set me free. October came around again, marking the anniversary of when I'd discovered the missing money, when everything had fallen apart. I spent the day alone, deliberately walking through the city, visiting all the places that had been part of my journey. The hospital where I'd gotten my diagnosis and my treatment. The coffee shop where Vanessa had told me the truth. My old apartment in Capitol Hill. Each place was a marker of who I'd been and who I was becoming. I ended up at Cary Park, watching the sunset paint the city in gold and orange, the Space Needle pointing up at the sky like a promise. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa in San Francisco. Thinking of you today. Hope you're doing okay. I smiled and texted back, I'm good. Really good actually. And I meant it. I'd been through something that should have destroyed me. Cancer. Betrayal. Financial ruin. But instead of being destroyed, I'd been transformed. I'd learned who I could trust and who I couldn't. I'd learned that I was stronger than I thought. I'd learned that kindness could come from the most unexpected places, that guilt could be transmuted into generosity, that the end of one story was just the beginning of another. Marcus had emailed me one last time in late October, a long rambling message about regret and redemption and how he'd learned from his mistakes. He was in therapy now, he said. He'd found religion. He was a different person. He hoped someday I could forgive him. I read it once, then deleted it. Forgiveness wasn't something I owed him. Maybe someday I'd forgive him for my own peace, to release the last bits of anger and hurt I was still carrying, but that day wasn't today and it might not ever come. And that was okay. Some things didn't need to be forgiven to be survived. I started dating again seriously in November, meeting people through apps and friends and random encounters in coffee shops and bookstores. Most of them didn't go anywhere, just pleasant evenings that reminded me I was still capable of connection, still capable of feeling attraction and interest and curiosity about another person. I wasn't looking for anything serious. I was just looking to remember how to be a person who dated, who had fun, who didn't define herself by what she'd survived. Then I met James. He was a teacher at an elementary school in Ballard, patient and funny and completely unintimidated by my history. Our first date was at a comedy show and he made me laugh so hard I cried, and it felt like something unlocking in my chest, permission to be happy, to be light, to be something other than the sum of my traumas. We took things slow, both of us cautious for different reasons, but there was something there, something real and possible. By December, as the city decorated itself for the holidays and the rain returned with a vengeance, I found myself taking stock of my life. I had a job I liked, an apartment that felt like home, my health, my family, new friends and old friends, and this complicated almost friendship with Vanessa that had evolved into genuine affection despite everything. I had James, who was becoming important to me in ways that were exciting and terrifying. I had money in the bank, enough to feel secure, enough to know that if something went wrong I wouldn't be instantly destroyed. I had survived. More than survived. I'd rebuilt. I'd become someone new, someone shaped by fire and pain but not defined by it. The cancer was part of my story, but it wasn't the whole story. Marcus's betrayal was part of my story, but it wasn't the whole story. Vanessa's redemption was part of my story, but it wasn't the whole story. I was the whole story, all of it, the good and the bad and the complicated messy middle. On New Year's Eve I stood on my balcony wrapped in a blanket, watching fireworks explode over the city, each burst of light a celebration of making it through another year, another day, another moment. James was inside making hot chocolate and I could hear him humming in the kitchen, and there was something so perfectly ordinary about that moment that it made my chest ache with gratitude. My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. Happy New Year and so proud of you. Another from Vanessa. New year, new chapter. You've earned it. Another from Dr. Harrison's office reminding me of my 3-month follow-up scan in January. A reminder that I'd always be a cancer patient in some way. Always be checking, always be vigilant. But as I stood there in the cold December air, listening to the city celebrate around me, I realized I was okay with that. I was okay with the scans and the vigilance and the knowledge that nothing was guaranteed. Because nothing had ever been guaranteed. Marcus had taught me that. Cancer had taught me that. Life had taught me that. The only thing you could control was how you responded to what happened, and I'd chosen to respond by surviving, by rebuilding, by opening myself up to possibility even when possibility felt terrifying. James came out onto the balcony, handed me a mug of hot chocolate topped with whipped cream and cinnamon, exactly how I liked it. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, sliding his arm around my waist. "Everything," I said. "Nothing. How strange life is. How I ended up here when 2 years ago I never could have imagined any of this." "Regrets?" he asked gently. I thought about it. Really thought about it. Did I regret marrying Marcus? Did I regret the years I'd spent with him, the trust I'd given him, the life we'd built together? Did I regret not seeing who he really was sooner? "No," I said finally. "Not regrets. Just lessons. Really expensive, really painful lessons." He laughed, kissed the top of my head. "Well, for what it's worth, I'm glad you ended up here. With me. On this balcony. Right now." "Me too," I said, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. The fireworks continued, painting the sky in colors that shouldn't exist in nature, temporary and beautiful and gone too fast, just like everything else. And I stood there with James, drinking hot chocolate, watching the city celebrate, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. I felt whole. Not fixed, because you can't fix something that was fundamentally broken, but whole in a new way, rebuilt from the pieces that were left into something that was entirely my own. This was my story. Not a story about cancer, though cancer was in it. Not a story about betrayal, though betrayal was in it. Not a story about revenge or redemption or any single thing. It was a story about survival. About transformation. About learning that the person you think you are and the person you actually are can be two different things, and sometimes it takes everything falling apart to figure out which one is real. I was Anne Chen. I was 35 years old. I was a cancer survivor. I was divorced. I had been betrayed by my husband and saved by his mistress in a twist so strange I still sometimes couldn't believe it had happened. I had lost everything and gained something better. I had died in a way and been reborn. And I was standing on a balcony in Fremont on New Year's Eve, watching fireworks with a man who made me laugh, thinking about my future instead of my past, and that alone felt like the greatest victory of all. Not because the ending was perfect or everything was resolved or I'd found some neat moral to wrap everything up in, but because I was here, still breathing, still fighting, still hoping, still alive. And after everything, that was more than enough.